is your favorite statist?
Whoa, that's vicious. That's underhanded. I wouldn't expect. I thought you were a nice guy. Favorite statist. Wow.
Come on, everyone has one.
The only good statist is a dead statist. So dead statist is my favorite. I don't know. FDR, he's a good statist and he's dead. He's my favorite statist. But any dead statist is my favorite.
Oh my gosh, this is great.
Transmitting directly from the launch pad. Bringing blue collar to your cell tower. The rock and roll libertarian himself. It's time to blast off with Johnny Rocket.
You know you gotta dig an old record machine, and you gotta dig that rockabilly scene. You know you gotta dig that hip-hop high, and you gotta dig an old Sub 45.
Hey, it's Blast Off with Johnny Rocket, and I'm here with my Ray of Truth, the beautiful Raylene Lightheart.
Hi guys. Hello, Johnny.
How you doing tonight?
I am so excited for the show, and it's, there's a lot of wildfires right now, so it's kind of smoky outside. So I've been cooped up in here. How about you?
Same thing. Like yesterday, I couldn't even see, it's so bad, the smoke out here. It is so bad that I started sneezing just spontaneously yesterday. And what's really cool though? I think our guest that we have today would probably say it's the government's fault that it's smoke here.
Definitely mismanagement.
It is mismanagement. So you ready to bring on our guest, Raylene?
I cannot wait.
Okay, here we go. Walter Block is an Austrian School economist and an anarcho-capitalist. Walter holds the Harold E. Wirth Eminent Scholar Endowed Chair in Economics at the J.A. Butt School of Business at Loyola University New Orleans and is a senior fellow at the Ludwig von Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama. He is best known for his 1976 book, Defending the Undefendable, which takes contrarian positions in defending acts which are illegal and disreputable. Okay, Raylene, prepare for liftoff.
Copy that, Johnny.
Covers, tie-downs, and grounding cables.
Removed as required.
Communications connected.
Check.
Preamps in the green.
Check.
Cold beer.
Double check.
Thrusters are hot. Raylene, are you ready to rock?
All systems go, Johnny.
Let's blast off with Walter Block! Walter, thank you so much for being here, sir.
My pleasure. Always good to be with you.
Well, it's awesome that you're here, man. And, you've been kind of a controversial guy in the libertarian movement for a while, which is a good thing, I think, because at least people know who you are. You're not really going anywhere if you're not controversial, Walter. And I went back on YouTube a couple of weeks ago, and I saw this video you did, and I just thought it was fantastic. It was on sociobiology, and I just thought it was fascinating. You kind of maybe go over a little bit with us, because I think the audience would really like to hear your thoughts on it.
I'd be glad to, but first, before I do,
yes, sir.
What I'd like to do is talk about smoke. You people were complaining about the smoke.
Yes.
Yes.
And as far as I'm concerned, all problems are created by government.
I knew it.
Every problem, from cancer to smoke to, bad breath, whatever, any problem you mention, it's always government's fault. And I have general principles and a specific one about forest fires. The general one is they take half the GDP, and we'd be doubly rich if we had all our GDP, and we'd be able to put some money toward cancer cures and getting to the moon and stuff like that.
Right.
And secondly, with their half of the GDP, they promulgate all sorts of rules and regulations which make our half of the GDP even less efficient. So we're doubly poor. One, because they take half our money,
right.
And two, because they make it not impossible, but difficult for us to create wealth. Okay, now, with regard to the smoke and the forest fires, I'm trying to get data for this, but I don't have data for it. But what I'd like to do, I have a hypothesis. My hypothesis is that there'll be more forest fires on government-owned forests than on private forests. Why? Why is this my hypothesis? Well, because if you're a private forestry company, Johnny, and you have a forest fire on your land, you're going to lose money.
Yes.
And if you don't prevent forest fires very well, you're going to go broke and someone else is going to take over your forest.
That's true.
So there's a chance that you'll do something. Now, I'm not sure what, maybe cut swaths of land so that the fire can't leap too far, or get rid of the underbrush. I don't know. I'm not a forest.
That is part of the maintenance. It is cleaning the underbrush and getting the old growth, like keeping the good trees and getting rid of the old stuff. Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Well, but I think if you're a private owner, you'll do that better. Whereas if you're a government bureaucrat and you don't do a good job, you don't lose money, you don't lose your job, you don't lose anything. So I expect better results from private forests than government forests. I don't have the data for it. All I have is a hypothesis, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to collect data on this. And it is my view. And I fully expect, based on my research and everything else, from roads to garbage collection to, delivery of postal services, that the government will do a poorer job than the private market. And I see no reason why forest fires would be an exception to this general rule.
I agree, Walter. And I think you're right. I mean, I would have a vested interest in making sure that my land wasn't going to be set on fire. And if it was, I would take care of it really quick. Whereas if
you didn't, you'd lose money and you'd go broke, which
that's right.
is good.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm also endangering other people, but they have no incentive to put it out. That's what I'm thinking. They have no real incentive.
Right. The government they have some incentive. They're human beings. They have grandchildren. They don't want, they're against forest fires.
Right.
I'm willing to concede that to the devil, but they don't have the economic incentives, which is very important.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's talk about sociobiology. Why did I get into this? I got into this because I'm puzzled. On the one hand, libertarianism is the best philosophy ever made. It's better than sliced bread. It's the most wonderful thing. Peace, prosperity, voluntary trade, no initiation of violence. It's just marvelous. Mm-hmm. And yet, how many people are libertarians? Well, not that many. Maybe 1% of the electorate, 3% of the electorate, maybe 10% if you define it a little bit more broadly.
Right.
Low tax liberals. But why so few? Why does Ron Paul get an audience of, 10,000 when he should have 10 million or 100 million? Why isn't Murray Rothbard better known, as well known as, Krugman or, Shakespeare, for that matter?
Right.
And my attempted explanation is sociobiological.
Okay.
So, what is sociobiology? Sociobiology is the theory that says we behave the way we behave because of what it took to live and give birth to children and keep the genes into the next generation.
Sure.
Of human beings when we were in the trees or in the caves, 1 million years ago, or whenever we were in the trees or the caves. So, for example, if in our tribe, Johnny, this week I'm sick, you help me, and next week you're sick and I help you, our tribe is going to survive. Mm-hmm. Whereas in this other tribe, Joe is sick and Pete doesn't help him, and then Pete's sick and Joe doesn't help him, that tribe is probably not going to do as well.
Right.
Another thing is a baby cries. Well, with us human beings, when a baby cries, we're very highly motivated.
We jump up and we say, "What's wrong? What's wrong?"
Yes, we try to help. And if there were a tribe that had the same brain capacity as us and the same strength and the same opposable thumb and the same everything else, but they didn't worry about babies, well, they wouldn't survive. Okay, so that's sort of the background of sociobiology. Namely, the reason we are the way we are is because of what was required millions of years ago to survive, and that stuff got embedded in us. It got hardwired in us. Mm-hmm. We are, just by nature, we are driven to be beneficial to other people. Now, There are two ways to be beneficial to other people. There are two ways. There's the explicit and implicit cooperation. Explicit cooperation is charity. You help me, I help you. It's being nice. It's, somebody, I don't know, if we're in a movie theater and somebody is coughing and writhing on the floor, we'll call an ambulance. That's explicit cooperation.
Right.
What is implicit cooperation? And that explicit cooperation is hardwired into us very, very deeply. Mm-hmm. What is implicit cooperation? Implicit cooperation is the market system.
Interesting.
The free enterprise system is also a way of implicitly cooperating. For example, New Orleans went through Katrina about 10 years ago, and there were price gougers. What's a price gouger? A price gouger is somebody who charges triple, quadruple, 10 times as much
right.
or orange juice or diapers or milk or whatever. Now, this is a way of cooperating. It sounds horrible.
It's awesome.
It sounds horrible to people who are only hardwired for explicit benevolence. This is implicit benevolence, and very few people are hardwired for this, or even hardwired to comprehend this once it's explained to them. How is price gouging helpful? Well, right now we're in New Orleans and we're starving and we're needy, and people in Montana have two possible motivations to help us. One is benevolence or explicit cooperation. They should come down here. They should send gifts. The other is implicit cooperation, markets, namely earn a profit. Come down here with a truckload of orange juice and sell it at triple or quadruple. That's a motivation. So if we allow price gouging, more Montanans or more people from God knows where, California, New York, will come down to New Orleans and help us. The second way that price gouging helps is we're now going into Walmart. And the first 100 people at the old prices, what are we going to do?
Hoard everything.
We're going to grab
everything.
We're going to grab everything.
Right.
We're not going to leave anything for the people at the end of the line because, we're scared. Our baby needs milk, and we're going to get 20 quarts of milk, even though we only ordinarily buy 2 or 3. That's at the old prices. Now, if milk were $30 a quart, we would be more cooperative with the people in the back of the line. We would say, whoa, I'd really like to take 20 of these, but 20 of these at $30 a quart is $600, and, that's just for milk. And most of it's going to get spoiled anyway, because who knows about the electricity. So we are implicitly cooperative through price gouging, but very, very few people can appreciate that. Only mutants like the three of us and all other libertarians and good economists, we're really mutants because we either naturally adopted this implicit cooperation, or after it was taught to us in Economics 101 and we read a book by Henry Hazlitt or Murray Rothbard or Ludwig von Mises, we got it.
Yes.
Whereas our friends on the left, some of them are really good-hearted. I mean, Bernie Sanders, he's a nice guy. He really wants to help people. It's just that his idea of helping people is only explicit cooperation. The idea of implicit cooperation through markets, it just goes right past him, right over his head. And yet, with the best will in the world, I mean, he's a nice guy. I went to high school with him. I know him. I was on the track team with him. He really is a lovely person. But he doesn't know economics, and he just can't understand how we can implicitly cooperate with each other through markets. So that's my explanation. It's a sociobiological explanation as to why we behave the way we behave. By the way, I wrote a paper on this, and we found out that there were markets about 10,000 years ago. The proof of this is we go to some tribe 10,000 years ago, and they had, 3,000 pots, way more than they could use. And 20 miles down the stream, there were 3,000, fish hooks. And we assumed they were trading. So we have some openings. We have some hardwiring for implicit cooperation through markets. But these are very superficial, only 10,000 years ago, or maybe 15,000 years ago, whereas we go way back to when we were apes or monkeys or whatever we were. And even before that, I mean, the deer, the mother deer is helping the baby deer. So the explicit cooperation, the benevolence goes back to us as mammals and maybe even as cold-blooded creatures. So that's my explanation as to why there are so few libertarians, because we're mutations. We're weirdos.
I love it. I love it. One quick question, Walter. How does that relate to women in the workforce?
Oh my gosh, I wanted to know that too. Great.
Well, this sociobiology has a lot of explanatory power, and it certainly explains the male-female differences. For example, in our tribe, the tribe that the three of us came from,
the cool tribe,
if a man saw a 22-year-old girl, he said, whoop-de-doo, let me at her.
Right.
If he saw a 60-year-old woman, and some 60-year-old women are very pretty.
Right.
I think Madonna just turned 60. She's beautiful.
Yeah.
And what we say is, not that interested. Now, there was this other tribe, not our tribe, the tribe that went extinct, and they saw a 22-year-old girl, and they said, not ripe, ignore her. And they saw a 60-year-old woman, they said, whoop-de-doo, let me at her. Well, that tribe didn't survive.
Huh.
Right.
So one reason why we, the survivors, you look at a 22-year-old girl and they are the ingenue, they are the movie stars. When they get to be 60, they're the mother in the movies. And a lot of the actresses complain. They say, well, I used to get these great parts, but now I'm 52 and I can't get them anymore. Well, the reason is because of sociobiology. Men have this genetic predisposition or this hard wiring to be interested in girls who are 22 or 25 or whatever, namely childbearing ages. So that's one explanation.
Wow, that makes sense. That really does.
Yeah, I actually think that this might be the way to get to the rational leftists. I think that the way you're deconstructing this, when you problem solve, Walter, do you start from the problem and go backwards? Because the way you come to your solutions and explanations is a little different than other people. How do you solve an issue?
Boy, that's a tough question. I don't know. It
That's
just
a good
sort of
one.
comes at me. I'm taking a shower and all of a sudden I got this idea, or I'm half asleep and I get this idea. I have to have a pad beside my bed so I can write it down, because if I don't write it down, I'll just forget it and I won't sleep that whole night. I'll keep thinking about it. I don't know where I get my ideas. They just sort of pop into my head. Sometimes I fudge. Namely, I know what the right answer is, and then I have to concoct a libertarian theory that will get me there. For example, I know that the right answer is, or I know that the wrong answer is everybody on Earth dies.
Okay.
That's the wrong answer. So I have to come up with something for the right answer. So let's take the case of the Martians. The Martians are all powerful,
Right.
and they're nasty. And they say that unless we kill innocent person Joe, the next guy walking down the street, they're going to blow up the whole Earth and kill everyone, including Joe.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
And yet we libertarians have this view that the non-aggression principle, it's not cool, it's not right, it's not ethical, it's not legal to kill Joe. He's a totally innocent person. So how are we going to solve this? Remember, we fudged. We know that the right answer is to not let the Martians do their thing.
Right.
So the concoction that I came up with, because I have a weird mind, is the following. Namely, one of us, me, I go and I kill Joe. And then you guys hold a ticker tape parade in my honor, and you give me a hero's medal because, I didn't really want to do it, but I had to do it because I saved the whole world. And then you execute me.
But that would actually be logical.
Well, the point is, you see, libertarian theory, we now get to delve a little bit more deeply into libertarian theory. A good first approximation is the non-aggression principle.
Right.
But I think a deeper, better understanding of the libertarian principles or libertarianism is, under what conditions is it justified to use violence?
yeah.
And if I kill Joe, it's justified to use violence against me. Now, the reason I did it was, not the ordinary, I killed Joe because I wanted to take his money, or, I'm not really a low-life criminal. I'm a high-minded criminal. I did it to save the world.
Right.
But still, I did it.
Right.
So the libertarian theory is now what happens to me? Well,
You
what
still
happens to me is either the death penalty or I go to Joe's parents or his heirs or whoever it is, because the crime I committed was not against society. It was against Joe and his heirs. And I say, look, please forgive me. I loved, I didn't really want to kill Joe, but, these Martians. Or take another case. I'm now a libertarian concentration camp guard. And the way the concentration camp guards work for Nazis, you have to kill 100 Jews or blacks or non-Aryans, gays, whatever. You have to kill 100 a day. And if you kill less than 90, they'll find you out and they'll kill you. So I go and I volunteer and I become a Nazi concentration camp guard, and I kill 90 people every day, thus saving 10. And at the end of the period, I've saved, 1,000 people, and I've killed 9,000 people. And I'm now brought into the bar, and we're having the Nuremberg trial for me. And I admit it. I say, yes, I killed 9,000 people. I saved 1,000. And the reason I killed the 9,000 was to save 1,000. And if I didn't do it, all 10,000 would have died. And I recognize that libertarian theory can put me to death because, heck, I killed 9,000 people. That's a lot of people.
That's a lot.
However, I plead with the heirs of the 1,000 people, and I say, look, I wish I could have, saved your brother, or rather the heirs of the 9,000 people that I killed. And I say, I wish I could have saved your child, your uncle, your father. I couldn't. I just randomly, saved only 1 out of 10. So if you want to kill me, you have that right. However, if you want to show mercy, I would be, very willing to accept the mercy.
Right.
This is my libertarian concentration camp guard thesis. And it comes about through fudging, because I know the right answer is to save 1,000 people rather than let 10,000 people go, save 1,000 if possible.
So you're using human behavior. It's like another form of praxeology.
Yeah, it is sort of praxeological. I'm trying to be logical. I'm trying to delve deeply into what libertarianism really is all about. And I start with the non-aggression principle, but it doesn't work. The non-aggression principle does not work against the Martians, and it doesn't work against the Nazis. We need something more. And so what I deduce or infer or conclude from this little operation is that a deeper meaning of libertarianism is not so much don't initiate violence against non-aggressors or against innocent people, but rather what happens to you if you do? And the only justified use of violence is in retaliation or in defense.
Walter, really quick, you were talking about implicit and explicit benevolence.
Yes.
Do you think statism or collectivism has been hardwired into our DNA for survival reasons?
Well, I don't like the word collectivism because there's nothing wrong with voluntary collectivism. A team sport is a collective. I mean, if we're really against collectivism, we would be only in favor of individual sports like track or swimming, and we'd be against basketball or football. Collective enterprises are fine as long as they're voluntary. The problem is not so much collectivism; it's coercive collectivism. You're forced into the commune, or you're forced into the government. So I'm sort of a stickler or picky or something about language.
Sure.
So
I know what you meant. I understand. Yeah.
Ask me the question again.
I mean, basically, do you think the need to be ruled, right? How about that? Or statism is hardwired into our DNA?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that probably there was some benefit in having a tribal leader who would maybe the wisest man in the tribe, and instead of 100 people in the tribe dithering while the lion came a courting or whatever, or the enemy came a courting. So I think that there is some benefit in having leadership. Now, whether it's coercive leadership, I certainly wouldn't favor, but there's nothing wrong with leadership. They say anarchists unite is a contradiction. That's wrong. Or anarchists are against hierarchy. No, we're not against hierarchy, and we're not against cooperation, and we're not against leadership. We're only against coercion. So if there's the wise man and he's the tribal leader, Hans Hoppe is forever talking about elites, and there's nothing wrong with elites, and there's nothing wrong with authoritarianism. There's nothing wrong with employers bossing employees around. You get these left-wing anarchists who say bossism is bad. No, bossism isn't bad. I used to play the violin in an orchestra, and the conductor was the leader of the orchestra, and he would, with regard to the wind players, he would even tell them when to breathe. If you play the clarinet and you breathe at the wrong time, he stops the whole practice and yells at you.
Right.
So that's pretty totalitarian, but and it's leadership, and it
But it was voluntary. But it was voluntary. That's the key. Yep, absolutely.
I have a question for you. As there's all different kinds of listeners on the show, and for those who are embracing the principles of self-ownership and love the philosophy of libertarianism, but are having a hard time with econ, learning Austrian economics. Yes, where would you help these newbies start? Because it's a dry topic. I've read Rothbard, but it isn't easy to read. It takes me a little time to expand my brain sometimes. And what would you say to beginners? Where would you have them start? What book would you suggest, or videos, or anything like that?
Well, I would go to the Mises Institute. Mises Institute is the repository of all things Austrian. You just go mises.org, Mises.org,
Mises.
and they'd have tons of stuff. Now, probably the best starting book would be Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great book.
There were two books that started me on this path. That was one of them. The other was Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Those two books are good. Now, if you start with Murray Rothbard's Man, Economy, and State, or you start with Mises' Human Action, that's not a good way to start. That's advanced Austrian economics. But Murray Rothbard has done many, many shorter articles that are really, Mozartian in their clarity and in their beauty. I don't know, what has government done to our money? Things like that. And even his view on his mini book on the Austrian business cycle theory. So I think Murray is one of the better writers on the planet. Hazlitt might even be a better writer, but again, I think you might have started with Man, Economy, and State, or some very advanced book of Rothbard's. If you start with his mini-series, I think you'll do better.
Do you think that it's imperative for a libertarian to read and understand economics fully?
Well, let me break that question down into first, do I think it's imperative for libertarians to be an Austrian economist? And I really don't. Because there are very, very good libertarians who are not Austrian economists, Chicago economists. David Friedman, for example, is an anarchist, and he's a very good libertarian. Brian Kaplan is a non-Austrian. He's a critic of Austrianism, but I think he's a very good libertarian. So I don't think you have to be an Austrian economist to be a libertarian. But I think it helps. It helps being Austrian gives you a leg up on libertarianism, because Austrianism is based on individual human action and purposefulness. And there are a whole bunch of technical reasons why Austrian economics is more conducive with liberty than mainstream economics. Even libertarians like, I don't know, Gary Becker or Milton Friedman or George Stigler, they're all Chicago mainstream economists, and they are libertarians, but they're not as rabid as they could be. For example, they all favor, not David Friedman, I'm not sure about him, antitrust law. And I think even David Friedman, as a mainstream economist, would say that the markets can be inefficient. And he and his father, I think, would agree on this. I shouldn't speak about David, but I'll speak about Milton, because I wrote about this about Milton. Milton Friedman believes that there is such a thing as a market failure. A market failure means that if you have pure free enterprise, pure laissez-faire capitalism, there'll be a failure. Markets will fail. And even Mises fell short on this one, and Murray Rothbard corrected him on this. For example, let's say McDonald's. McDonald's does a good job, and it beats out Wendy's, and it beats out Burger King, and then it beats out the pizza, and then the only restaurant is McDonald's. That's it. Why? Because McDonald's did a better product at a lower price, and now every other restaurant went broke.
Okay.
Now, the mainstream economists would say, well, that's a monopoly. And monopoly, they'll draw you some figures that I think are invalid. And they'll say, see, there's a deadweight loss. And now the government, if they broke up McDonald's into many, many restaurants, maybe the numbers that we now have, I don't know how many restaurants we now have. If you count McDonald's as one, we must, and Burger King as one restaurant, even though they're a chain. I don't know how many restaurants there are in the country, 100,000 different ones?
Yeah,
I don't know. And what the mainstream would say is, well, let's break up the restaurant industry that has come about as one single seller, McDonald's, and let's break it up into 10,000 or 100,000 different restaurants. And Friedman, both Friedmans would say, yes, that would be more efficient. But then Friedman adds, but there are costs of breaking it up. There are costs of having antitrust, and we should only pursue antitrust against this super duper single seller monopoly, single seller McDonald's, if the costs of breaking it up and having court decisions are less costly than the inefficiency of the monopoly. Whereas the Austrians would say, this is hogwash. This is nonsense. Mm-hmm. The only monopoly is when government gives a grant of special privilege.
That's right.
In the old days, the king, the duke would fight the good fight, and the king would give the duke a monopoly over, I don't know, candle making in a certain area of England. Mm-hmm. And that was a monopoly, because if you try to make candles without getting permission from him, for which you'd have to pay, you go to jail.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
But this McDonald's, I'm free to, even when McDonald's had the only restaurant, the three of us are free to open up another restaurant in competition. So we say that there wasn't a monopoly. So this is one reason why, yes, it's important to know economics to be a libertarian, because the libertarian is going to say that without government, or that's the anarchist version, or with very, very minimal government, we will have pragmatically, we will have a utilitarian, we'll have prosperity. We don't need the government. The government just messes it up.
That's true.
So I think we need economics in general. And of all the economics, we need Austrian economics even more, because Austrian economics is more, what's the word, coincidental, or more congruent. That's the word I'm looking for. More congruent with libertarianism, even though there's a distinction between normative and positive. namely all versions of economics are just positive. They talk about what causes what. They don't talk about what's right.
Right.
Whereas libertarianism is a normative theory. It talks about what's right. And what's right is keep your mitts off of other people.
Very cool. Really quick, before the commercial break, Walter, I got to ask you a question, especially regarding Facebook right now, because there's been a lot of libertarians or people who are not necessarily mainstream media who are getting banned from Twitter and Facebook. And this has been going on now for about a week or two. But a lot of people are upset because a lot of people use Facebook to communicate their ideas. But at the same time, back in the day, there was just MySpace, and that was it. That was it. If you had to go on social media, it was MySpace. Facebook kicked everyone's butt, and now we have Facebook as our primary tool to communicate with. A lot of people use it. What do you have to say about that? Because it isn't a monopoly, because people could go somewhere else, right?
Well, it's a complicated issue because part of the power of Apple and Facebook and Zuckerberg and all those people that are banning Alex Jones and other Ron Paul's assistant, they banned him. Just ridiculous. Part of their power comes from patents, but that's a small part of their power. And as a believer in no intellectual property, I oppose intellectual property. I oppose patents. I oppose copyrights. I oppose all those things. I would say that part of their power comes from the government, and that part should be erased.
I agree.
And then what would happen would be that conservatives and libertarians would say, okay, look, you lefties, you don't want Alex Jones, you don't want Ron Paul people, you don't want free enterprise, you call it hateful. Okay, fine. We'll set up our own alternative. Now, the situation is, though, that there might now be, I don't know how many, maybe 100, maybe 1,000 other platforms. Each platform is very small. Look, if we set up a telephone service for the three of us and the only people that we can call are the other two, well, it's not really a good telephone service. You want to have a telephone service where you can call anyone. Right. So you have that problem where you need some sort of amalgamation. So my solution to the problem is first take away all illegitimate powers that the government gave these people. And then second, let's hope that the 1,000 or 10,000 platforms all get together and say, hey, there are 1,000 of us. Let's have a corporation, and we'll each have one share, and there'll be 1,000 shares in this corporation, and we'll call it, I don't know, the XYZ platform, or whatever you want to call it, or the Freedom platform, or the Libertarian platform, or whatever. And now we will get over this problem of everyone, goes to Google or everyone goes to Facebook. Because now we will have another option where all libertarians, of which there are, 5% of us, and all conservatives, of which there are, 30%. And now you have 35% of the population not going to Google, not going to Facebook, not going to these other guys, and we will have a bifurcation. They talk about divisiveness now, that the Democrats hate the Republicans, Republicans hate the Democrats. Well, this is going to be the mother of all divergencies or bifurcations. So, but these guys started it. They say anything they don't like is hate speech.
Right.
Well, this other group, the conservative, and I don't like being aligned with conservatives, because the way I see libertarianism, we're equidistant from the conservatives and the liberals, or the lefty progressives, whatever you want to call them. Yes, we agree with the right a little bit more in economics than the left, but we agree with the left a little bit more in personal liberties than the right.
That's right.
And we disagree with both of them on they're both warmongers. They never met a war they didn't like. And we only believe in defense, not offense. And the U.S. is very offensive. So I don't like to amalgamate ourselves with people on the right. And there is this group called the Federalist Society, which is half libertarian and half conservative. Well, nothing wrong with that, as long as we also join NORML, National Organization for the Repeal of Marijuana Legislation, NORML. They're a bunch of lefties, and we libertarians cooperate with them. So I think it's okay to cooperate with conservatives on certain issues and liberals, progressives on other issues, but we have to be distinct. We libertarians are distinct. We're neither of the right nor of the left.
That's right. Anyway, so let's blast off with Johnny Rocket, and I'm here with my Ray of Truth, Raylene Lightheart, and we're talking to Walter Block, and we're going to have Rocket Fire coming up next. So stick around. We'll be right back. Rock and roll.
Why do people hate libertarians? One part of America calls them soulless robber barons who want to stick children back in factories, and the other part thinks they're drugged-up anarchists. Who are they? And why have regular Americans been told to avoid libertarians and their ideas? Hi, I'm Remso W. Martinez, Amazon best-selling author of Stay Away from the Libertarians, where I'm going to debunk the myths, misconceptions, and outright lies thrown at libertarians, ranging from the idea that votes can be stolen to the radical notion that you own yourself. From personal stories to ignored history, I lay out the facts and ask you if these dastardly libertarians are as much of a threat as the mainstream media and establishment politicians make them seem. You can go ahead and get a copy in print and in Kindle e-reader on Amazon today. Stay Away from the Libertarians by Remso W. Martinez. Available on Amazon.
Hey guys, this is Roger Paxton, and if you're fed up with the government running every single aspect of your life, but you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, then what's wrong with you? Check us out at thelavaflow.com, or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast, striking the root every single episode.
Blast off, Johnny Rocket, and I'm here with my ray of truth, Miss Raylene Lightheart.
Hello.
How are you, Raylene?
I'm having a blast. I don't even want to ask questions. I just want to listen.
I know. We're talking to the one and only Mr. Walter Block here on Blast Off. Such an honor to talk to Walter Block, one of the most inspiring guys from the Mises Institute, and the pinnacle of libertarianism himself, right next to Murray Rothbard. So what we do here on the second segment, it's called Rocket Fire. Walter, what we do on Rocket Fire, sir, is I'm going to ask you a series of 10 questions. These questions will be politically and philosophically related, and if you can answer these questions between 30 to 60 seconds, that'd be badass. Walter, are you ready to play Rocket Fire?
I'll do my best, but as I said, I'm the professor. I'm long-winded. It'll be difficult today, but I'll try.
Okay, here we go. Question 1. How has the welfare system hurt the black family?
The welfare system has hurt the black family by breaking it up. Or no, not even breaking it up, making it impossible for it to form in the first place. Charles Murray wrote this wonderful book called Losing Ground, where he documents that the welfare system is so generous that it pays more to a young girl who's pregnant than the father of her baby. And it does so on the condition that he stay out of the house. So the welfare system has been a disaster for the black community. 3/4 of black kids are now raised without two parents. Just horrible.
Right on. Great answer. Question 2. What is the difference between approximate causes and ultimate causes?
Proximate cause is something that occurs directly, and an ultimate cause is indirect. The example I give in my book on roads is if I shoot somebody, the bullet is the proximate cause, but I'm the ultimate cause. I'm guilty. And what I say in my book on roads is that the proximate cause of highway fatalities is drunken driving and speeding and things like that. But the ultimate cause is government ownership of the roads. If the government didn't own the roads, we wouldn't have 40,000 people a year dying on those charnel houses. So they're the ultimate cause. The proximate cause is just the usual causes, speeding and drunken driving and vehicle malfunction and texting and other stuff like that. The ultimate cause is that the government manages the roads and doesn't eliminate that sort of a thing. And if we had private competing roads, they would.
Right on. Great answer. Question 3. Why do you think the left thinks trade is exploitative?
Why do I think that the left thinks trade is exploitative? Oh, yes, the left does think that trade is exploitative. And the only reason that they're against what Donald Trump is now doing is because they hate Donald Trump. But if they had their man in the White House, they'd be happy to have tariffs. They always did. They're not for free trade. Why do I think they think that trade is exploitative? Because they don't know economics. They're economically illiterate. They don't realize that every time anyone trades, they gain in the ex ante sense. I buy a shirt for $30, I value that shirt at more than $30, otherwise I'm not buying it. And the guy who sells me the shirt values it at less than $30, otherwise he's not giving me the shirt for the $30. So all the market consists of is buying and selling and renting and the lending and stuff like that. And the market is always mutually beneficial, but the left thinks it's exploitative. They're just economically illiterate. Some of them are very bright, but Einstein is a very bright guy in physics, but in economics, he was a moron.
All right. Right on.
Question 4.
Who has more control, consumers over producers or voters over politicians?
Oh, consumers over producers way more than voters over politicians. Voters only vote every 4 years or every 2 years, and they vote, package deal. Like if you like Hillary on policies 1, 3, 5, and 7, and Donald on policies 2, 4, 6, and 8, you got to make a package deal. You can't say, well, I want 2, 4, 6, and 8, because different people have different views. Whereas in the market, you can pick a green sweater, a short sleeve green sweater. You can narrowly focus your desire, whereas here you have to pick either Donald or Hillary.
There you go.
Question 5.
Should we accept Social Security payments from the government?
Only libertarians should accept Social Security, and only libertarians should accept welfare, because my favorite character in Atlas Shrugged was Ragnar Danishkold, who took money from government.
Right.
And I think we would be justified in taking money from government because government is a thief. However, if you support government, well, then you're part of the thievery. And then, it's not clear that you should take money from government because that's taking money from one thief to another. But, taking from a bigger thief and giving to a smaller thief. So maybe even non-libertarians should also take welfare and Social Security. The point is, while we have it, you should take it, especially libertarians. But we shouldn't have the policies in the first place.
Right on.
Question 6.
Do you believe animals have rights? And if so, to what extent?
Animals have no rights, because if animals had rights, then when the lion killed the zebra, we would get the lion and execute him for murder. And nobody thinks we should do that. Therefore, even they don't think that animals have rights. Murray Rothbard said when they can petition for their rights, look, if we go to Mars and we find entities that look half like a zebra and half like an octopus, and they say, hey, welcome to Mars, we'll trade with you, we'll be buddies, we'll respect your rights. Well, even though they look a little weird, they would then be rights-bearing creatures.
Right.
But the smartest animals, the dolphins and the chimpanzees, are nowhere near smart enough to do that. So they have no rights.
Right on.
Question 7.
Do you believe certain ethnicities are superior to others? Why or why not?
Oh, yes, certainly. Whites are way superior to blacks in swimming, and blacks are way superior to whites in basketball, and whites are way superior to blacks in Baroque music, and blacks are way superior to whites in jazz and other kinds of music like that. So, yeah, sure, Thomas Sowell and Walter Williams, their entire career has been, well, I wouldn't say their entire career, but a lot of their contribution has been showing how some ethnic groups are superior to other ethnic groups in this or in that or in the third thing. The Italians are superior to everyone else in leather goods, and the Irish in distillery and stuff like that. But when you say, well, is there one race or ethnic group that's superior, period, not in a particular area, well, then that's ridiculous. Because there's no criteria. You can't say whites are superior to blacks, period. Because yes, whites are superior to blacks in some things, and blacks are superior to whites in other things. And how do you have a weighting system? WEIGHT. You can't have any weighting system. So that's nonsensical.
Right on.
Question 8.
Is transgenderism, sexuality, or any other trans identification a psychological disorder, or is it a legitimate identity for some people?
Well, I have a friend whose name used to be Donald McCloskey.
Yes,
and
Deidre.
Whose name is now Deirdre McCloskey,
yes.
and she is a friend of mine. And not only is she a friend of mine, but she and I are now going to be co-authoring a book. And
nice.
I think she is one of the most brilliant economists on the planet, and I greatly admire her, and I greatly admire her courage. So I really can't answer your question. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. All I can say is I'm friends with Deirdre. I love Deirdre, and I'll have to leave it at that.
There you go.
Question 9.
How do you view spanking? Should a parent have the right to spank?
Yes, I've been in several debates on that. And the point I make is, there's a difference between child abuse and child rearing. I have 2 kids. So they're now in their 30s, late 30s, early 40s. And when they were babies, they didn't want me to diaper them. They would run away. They would crawl away. And what I did is I engaged in assault and battery. Namely, I held them down and I changed their diaper against their will. Was I guilty of child abuse? Come on, give me a break. I would be guilty of child abuse if I didn't change their diaper. So children are semi-rights-bearing creatures. They're not fully rights-bearing creatures. I didn't let my son go out and play in traffic that he wanted to. So, sometimes it's okay to spank a child if the only way to get him to not run into traffic or, get him to behave and not pull his sister's hair or something like that is to spank. A little bit of a spanking, yeah. Or even, a timeout. A timeout is kidnapping. Look, if I gave you a timeout and I said, you got to sit in that corner and you can't move, that's kidnapping. Well, I'm allowed to do that. Not with you. You're an adult, but with a baby or a 4-year-old child.
Sure. All right, man. Great answer.
Question 10.
Is getting a degree or a PhD a smart thing to do? And do you think it adds value to the individual?
Well, I was in a debate with Gary North on that. And if you're interested, Google Gary North versus Walter Block. It's on the Mises web. I did it at the Mises University. And I would say a PhD is not good for everybody. Not everybody should get a PhD. I mean, we need airline pilots, we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need plumbers, we need every sort of thing. But if your interest lies in that direction, probably it would be a good idea to get a PhD, especially in economics, not sociology, because economic jobs, you're more able to get a job as a libertarian in economics than in sociology. Sociology is 100% lefty. Economics, you have some options. If you're really interested in pursuing this and you're not good at math, and math is economics now very heavily mathematical, get in touch with me and I'll send you some information about that. And also, let me just end this by saying I'm a professor at Loyola University. I'm always looking for good students. So if you're of student age or you have a son or a grandchild who is thinking of college, think of Loyola. Not just me. I've got 4 out of 4 of my economics department at Austro-Libertarian. So that's a pretty good record.
That's great. And
the bonus question.
Walter, this is going to be a good one. Who is your favorite statist?
Whoa, that's vicious. That's underhanded. I wouldn't expect. I thought you were a nice guy. Favorite statist. Wow.
Come on, everyone has one.
The only good statist is a dead statist. So any dead statist is my favorite. I don't know. FDR, he's a good statist and he's dead. He's my favorite statist. But any dead statist is my favorite.
Oh my God.
That's great. That's Rocket Fire. Give it up for Walter Block. Awesome job. Awesome. That was great. Oh my God, that was the best answer. The last one was the best answer. Anyways, host Johnny Rocket here at Blast Off with my Ray of Truth, Miss Raylene Lightheart, and we're talking to Walter Block. We're going to be right back, so stick around.
It's time to shake up your podcast feed, folks, by subscribing to Lions of Liberty, the only libertarian variety show out there. Spend Mondays with me, Mark Claire, as I feature in-depth interviews with great names in the libertarian community and fun roundtable discussions.
Electric Liberty Land with me, Brian McWilliams, every Wednesday, your weekly dose of comedy, culture, and liberty.
And Felony Fridays with me, John Odermatt, where I expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and at lionsofliberty.com.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
My baby, she is cool to me. I gotta beat my baby, she's the one for me. When I see her walking by and look and say, oh my, well look at that baby, that gal belongs to me.
Hey, it's Blast Off with John Johnny Rocket, and I'm here with my ray of truth, Miss Raylene Lightheart. And we're talking to the one and only, the prolific Mr. Walter Block.
Oh, yeah.
And Walter, really quick before, give us your .coms. Where can people find some more information about you, sir?
WalterBlock.com. And go to Loyola University New Orleans and look me up under the economics department, and you'll get more than you really want, I guess.
That's awesome. Walter Block is on the show. All right, Raylene, take it away.
Okay, actually, I'm going to ask a really simple question because I feel like Walter is so good at talking, I don't want to get in his way. What first 5 things could we abolish right now in our government to inspire and usher in libertarianism and or hopefully anarcho-capitalism?
Wow, that's a good one. There was that guy, the senator from Texas, who wanted to abolish 3 departments and he couldn't think of what they were. Remember that in one of the debates? I forget the guy's name. What are the Fed probably would be one thing to go, because the Fed percolates throughout the economy and they screw up interest rates and they create the business cycle. So that would be one thing. Education would be another. We should have privatized education. And, I should have mentioned first the Army, the military. The military, I think the U.S. is now engaged in 6 active wars. And the U.S. has, maybe 1,000 military bases in 130 countries, and there are only 200 countries out there. So that would be my number one thing. Ron Paul says, bring the troops back home. When he was running for president, he said, bring the troops back home. And I think that would be a very good thing. And we don't need that many troops. The U.S. military budget is bigger than the military budgets of the next 7 countries with the next 7 biggest military budgets. Mm-hmm. Since World War II, I think the U.S. has bombed, 40 or 50 different countries. So number one would be, let's cut down on the U.S. military. If we're minarchists, not anarchists, we want a strong military, but one that defends us. Think of a very strong Coast Guard, and this idea of Marines and Navy and Army and this and that. It's really not necessary. And now, what's his name? Trump wants to have space cadets or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess my
Space
big
Force,
three
yeah.
Space Force. The big three would be the military, the Fed, and education. And after that, probably welfare system, because the black family is in dire straits because of the welfare system. And that's a shame and a disgrace. And then maybe legalize all drugs would be another one, because a lot of people are being killed over drug turf. I mean, we legalized alcohol, and alcohol is not a good thing. And yet nobody's fighting over alcohol turf. Whereas during prohibition of alcohol, we had that. So that would be another one that we should do. And maybe my favorite, the 5th one, would be the minimum wage law. Get rid of the minimum wage law, because it creates unemployment for those people least able to deal with unemployment, namely young people, and black people have a doubly high rate of unemployment compared to whites, and teenagers to adults, and black teens have a quadruple unemployment rate compared to white adults. So that would be my 5th one.
Right on. Okay, so since we're not going to do an after party with you, I do have a question from one of our listeners. Jeff Kyle asks, why do we not see libertarians piggybacking on the coattails of federalism and other constitutional standards to whittle away at the abuse of state power? I get the need to focus on pure fundamentals of liberty, which even the Constitution ignores, but it seems that law can be a good start reining in the obvious abuses of government power and acquiring the interest of the average person who has no concept of individual liberty, but believes that most laws are just.
I'm sort of puzzled by that. Maybe I'd do better if I could see the thing on a piece of paper or on a screen, not just having it written to you. But the one word that jumps out at me there is the word federalism. Uh-huh. So let me talk about that. I mean, I'm a professor, and that means that if I can't answer a question, I'll answer another one. Okay. That's what I'm going to do now. So let me talk about federalism, because that's the one thing that jumped out, and I realize I'm being unfair to this questioner because I don't really fully get it, and we've only got a few more minutes left, so I'm not going to ask you to read it again. Now, most libertarians are decentralists. namely, we should move power from the federal to the state, and from the state to the county, and from the county to the city, and the city to the borough. Let's have power decentralized as much as possible. I don't agree with that. I think that we libertarians should have no views on federalism, on centralization. Well, that's not fair either. Other things equal, I agree with that. The more power is distributed widely, the better. The more concentrated, the worse. Other things equal, but other things aren't always equal. For example, Ronald Reagan, when he was president, was trying to get New York City to stop its rent control. And what Ronald Reagan was doing is threatening that if New York City didn't get rid of its rent control, he was going to, kick New York City butt.
Right.
Well, I favor that, even though this was federalism, because rent control is evil. Rent control is an abomination. Rent control is a violation of rights. Rent control leads to shortages of housing and housing crises. So there, I favored the federal government over city government. And whether it's a state versus a federal or a state versus a city, my question is, who's on the libertarian side? Mm-hmm. If the centralized government is on the libertarian side, I'm a centralist. If the local government is on the libertarian side, I'm a localist. So I'm not a decentralist like most libertarians are. I think I diverge from most of my libertarian friends on that issue.
Right on.
I have one more question from Justin Lightheart, which is my husband, actually, Walter, because he and I were very excited about me interviewing you. You've met both Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard, and he wants to know if you have any quirky stories or descriptions to share with us, because we're all big fans.
Well, I'm probably the only person alive. No, that's not right. One of the very few people alive who shook the hands of Ludwig von Mises. And I never washed my hands since, so if it gets a little dirty, but if you shake my hand, you channel Mises. You get a little dirty, but what the heck, it'd be worth it.
Royal dirt.
When I met Mises, he was very, very old and very hard of hearing, and Percy Graves would ask questions or relay the questions to Mises, who couldn't hear them, and then he would bellow out Mises's answers because Mises couldn't speak too well. It was a shame I didn't meet Mises before that. It was the last seminar at NYU. Murray Rothbard, I was a friend with for, I don't know, I met him in 65, and I was a friend until he died in 98, I think it was. So I was a friend of his for many years, and my big complaint about Murray Rothbard is stomach cramps. He would have you laughing for hour after hour in his living room, and it was really grotesque. And Murray violated my rights by making me laugh so much. It was just, he was so funny. Even, what's his name? The conservative Buckley used to call Murray and his merry band. Well, Murray really did have a merry band. He was just so funny. I mean, my experience with Murray, I'd be reading Man A Communist State all day, and then at night I'd go play with him, play Risk or be in his living room, and I never really could understand that. He just wanted to be my friend. I thought I didn't even belong on the same planet with him. I mean, it's sort of like Mozart and Bach all rolled up into one in terms of political economy. So my life was greatly enriched by being a friend of Murray Rothbard's, and I try to emulate him in every way I can.
That's a great story, Walter. Thank you so much for sharing that, man. And I also heard he likes jazz music.
Yes, he did like jazz music. One of his flaws, he should have liked Baroque. I like Baroque.
See, I'm a big jazz guy, so I think me and Murray would have gotten along there. We'd have put on some old records.
Yes.
That would have been cool. Anyways, Walter, thank you so much. Give it up for Walter Block here on Blast Off. Walter, Thank you so much again, sir. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And man, you're just spot on and everything. I was like, I'm going to get Walter. And I was talking to my buddy. He's like, no, you're not. You're not getting Walter on anything. He has an answer for everything, and you do. And there it is, man.
You're very kind, and thanks for having me on your show again.
All right, Walter, have a great night, sir.
Ground control to Johnny Rocket. Ground control to Johnny Rocket. Well, I guess Johnny and Walter are in the back having some scotch. Johnny doesn't often drink scotch, but it's a special occasion. And Walter has to get going soon, because he's getting old, and it's past his bedtime. Johnny said it was fine though, because he figured it was a good time to pregame for the after party. But unfortunately, in his excitement over Rothbard's stories, Johnny forgot to end the show, and he just threw me the mic and disappeared. Figures. But anyways, please go to blastoffpodcast.com to hear previous episodes of the show. And if you'd like to hear us talk more about how much of a badass Walter Block is, head on over to patreon.com/blastoffpodcast and join us for the after party. Admission is only $1 an episode. Hope to see you there. Well, this is Ground Control signing off. Rock and roll. See you next week.